how much is your process of evaluation that we're talking about, which is pretty subtle? Again, it's not a simple number. About like overhead or what proportion goes to salaries or whatever it is. What are some of the lessons you've learned that might apply, generally to organizations and how have they changed over time? Like you said, you're still young, but I'm sure you've learned a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a ton of lessons and a ton of mistakes, and happy to talk about them very specifically. Going all the way back to the beginning, when we were starting, we were very frustrated by a lack of detailed information from charities about what they did. And so one of the first organizations that we recommended way back when was an organization called PSI. I think they now are literally called PSI, but it originally stood for Population Services International. And I should say, as a caveat to this, all of what follows, all of what I'm talking about is roughly now, 10 to 15 years ago. So none of this is a statement about what PSI does today. But back then when we first came to them, they were able to provide a huge amount of data on what they had distributed, where it had gone, what the effects were. And we supported them in large part because I think we took those numbers at face value in a way that I think was overly enthusiastic about quantification as a path to getting the best answer. And over time, and this is 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010, we started to ask, to what extent should we believe these numbers? Do we know that the numbers we're getting back? If they say we distributed 1,000 nets to this location in Zambia, well, how do we know those nets got there and that people used the nets? And as we dug in further, I think all the numbers that they reported were sort of true. They were not fraudulent, but also I don't think they were gathered with the most rigorous method.
Kind of like GDP statistics in certain countries. It's we had an episode on that we'll link to, but yeah, general problem.
They've done a lot of work on this over time to improve. But I guess one mistake that we made early on that we've learned from is, I think, being overly enthusiastic about data in and of itself at the expense of, critical evaluation of information to try to make good decisions. And so it moved us more towards, I think, a place we are today, which is certainly quantifying a lot, gathering the data we can, but then trying to go further.